Is it recording? Light is on. Hopefully this works, because I bungled the recording already. So, babe, I fixed the wheel. It turns out that the potentiometer wasn't dirty, because it's tiny. It's like this, and it's super tightly sealed, so there's nothing that could get in there. So it's definitely not dirty. There could be wear and tear, but I've really not used this wheel all that much, so doubt it. So I had this thing open a couple of times, and the last time I had it open, I noticed that the axis, or the axle of the steering wheel goes into like this massive wheel thingy, comes to a head that's really tiny, and that goes into the potentiometer and stirs around in there basically. And in so doing, it moved the potentiometer around because it had a little bit of give. And I noticed it had more give to this side than on this side. And so, to me, that explained that I would get fuzzier readings on this side of the wheel than on this side. So I put two and two together and figured this thing probably shouldn't have any give, you know? So there's no screw to tighten or anything though. I don't know how it used to be tighter, but I just squirted a little bit of glue in there, and now it's fixed, literally and figuratively. So now I get smooth and correct readings from turning the wheel, as it should be. What I don't have is force feedback. This is an ancient wheel, and so the force feedback wouldn't be very good anyway, because it doesn't have a modern helical gear system with the angled gears that modern Logitech wheels have. It also doesn't have a pulley system like a better wheel would have, like a Trustmaster. So all this has is very old school gears and a little motor in it that drives them, but the motor requires an extra power adapter to be plugged in, and I don't have that anymore because I used that for my keyboard to make music, and eventually it broke. So once stores open again, I'm going to get a cheap power adapter with 24 volts, which is what this thing eats, and then I'll have glorious force feedback, and this thing is going to shake around a little while you drive. What's cool about that is that when the car starts slipping, you can notice it in the force feedback. Allegedly. I haven't tried it, but allegedly this works. So this is the wheel. It has a couple buttons on it. You could theoretically put a bunch of functions on the front buttons, and these buttons back here, they're called switches, but they're also buttons, if we're honest. They are to switch gears up and gears down in a sequential shifting thing. I'm not a car guy. But I set it to automatic because it's one less thing to worry about. On the floor, I have two pedals, one gas, one for brakes, and they're mounted on a little plastic plate. And the problem with that is, like, the whole thing is plastic. This is a toy, right? It's not a simulation wheel or anything. It's a toy. And so it would slip. I don't even have it on a rug. I have it on a wood floor. So if I were to step on the brakes, it would slip away from me unless I hold it in place with my heel on the plate, right? But in order to do that, I have to sit like this with my belly up, because because I can't sit like this and work the pedals, because then I would push them away. So I have to sit like this, and that means belly up. So it's a bit of an endurance race when we're doing this. Worth it though, because the gradual input is very neat to have. So there are a couple different countries to drive here, as you can see. This is Dirt Rally. It's a simulator of rally. Rally is not quite off-road, but shitty road. So like maintenance roads, agricultural roads, old tank roads sometimes. Dirt roads, like old dirt road from Dirt Road fame. And you can select which country you want to drive in. So Greece has really, really ugly, slippery ass gravel. It has beautiful scenery, and it's interesting to drive, but it's also difficult to drive, and I want this to go halfway smoothly. So we're going somewhere else. So Wales would be an option. Wales has mud and gravel. It's fairly wet in Wales. And the roads are fairly narrow, which is why we're going not to Monaco or Germany, because those are mostly asphalt, and I want the car to slip a little, because it's fancy, it just looks cool. So we're going to Finland, which also has gravel roads, gravel and dirt, but they're fairly wide. They got nothing but space up there in Finland. They have space and wood, basically, so if streets aren't made from wood, they're made from space. Right. Alright. Now we gotta check that it's midday and sunny. There we go. Because I don't want to drive in rain. And we're gonna pick Kailajärvi. I don't know either. In terms of cars, you got some classics and you got new ones. Like this is the rally stuff that I'm used to from games such as Rally Sports that came out in the 2000s. But nowadays modern rally cars behave a little bit different. But they are beasts also. So we're going to pick the shittiest car the game has. Because this only has 100 horsepower and front wheel drive, so it's more like the car that I have on the road. So it'll feel a little more natural for me. Because switching from controller to wheel is already a lot to get used to. Alright. Car, there we go. Now it's loading. Okay, let me get in position here. There are a couple different camera angles in the game. Ah, look at this. That's beautiful. I like that they put a lake in there. Doesn't matter, really, just the road matters. But they put a little more in there, so it feels like you're driving in these places, which is good for me. Because I don't really care about getting good times, good splits, as the pros say. I just want to drive around, mostly. So this is us. This is a camera angle from inside the cockpit where you can see the wheel, and you can see that we're on the wrong side, because it's an English car. And here, this is quite comfortable if you're driving with a controller, but with a wheel it feels oddly disconnected. This is good. Then here, basically the same, but you see a little bit of the car's bumper. So it's just aesthetically nicer, I feel. But this is my favorite because it's in the car, right? But it's set in front of the wheel, and so the physical wheel, the one in front of me here, to me, it looks like that's the wheel of the car. Like I'm part of this world, you know? So that is pretty neat. Ah, look at us go. Usually you're allowed shakedowns before the actual racing, which means you can drive the track and then your guy that's sitting next to you can take notes And that's what you hear him say there. So he's giving you directions like saying 3 left, into 4 right, tightens, over crest, or whatever, right? And that helps you to know what you're up against. Whoop, whoop. Ah, caught it. Because my ass was slipping there a little bit. What's interesting compared to the controller is that the controller is really fast. Like, you can go from one extreme to another like this. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Whereas with the wheel, you would have to move the whole physical object around and against the motor inside, against the gears. So it's not as fast. You can't go from one extreme to the other in a split second. But you have a lot more fine control. So when you're driving mild curves like this, right, you can just tilt the wheel a little bit. Whereas with the controller, if you try to feather it, the game expects accurate input because it's a simulator and not just a game. And that means the game thinks that your car is being jerked around by a crazy person. And so accordingly, it starts wigging out. And you can catch that sort of with the controller because you're fast, but it makes it more difficult in some ways and less difficult in other ways. In the end, it's a matter of getting used to stuff. The thing is, this doesn't translate one-to-one to how a real car would move, because the wheel I have is a toy, like I said. So it only goes to 90 degrees in each side. So a real car has a lot more. So this has 180 degrees in total, and a rally car has between 450 and 500 something. And so I set up the wheel to not react totally linearly. So I have finer tuning in the middle, and the further I tilt it, the more extreme it gets. So up to about 45 degrees or so, it feels like a car in my estimation, which is nice. But then if I really need to throw it around a hairpin or something, right, then I can tilt it all the way and it'll ramp up and I get the full range. At the cost of some authenticity, I guess, right? So, this is going fairly well. I started out driving a little more conservatively, like I would drive if I was on the road there. But now that I'm getting more of a feel for it, I'm pushing the gas to the metal at times. Like right now, going mostly straight. This would scare me more on the controller, because when you do fine adjustments with the controller, you really risk throwing the car off. Whereas here, if it's mostly straight, as you can see, right, I don't have to do much with the wheel there. So it's more stable, which is nice. Ah, look at that, and there's the finish coming up. And whee! Now this is gonna be neat because the game has a feature where you can watch the replay, and so this is us, and it shows it in these cinematic angles, like it would look if this was broadcast on TV. And what's nice about it is that you can see how, like here around the turn there, you can see how smoothly it's gliding around, and how well you took the corners. Because when you're in the cockpit and the whole thing is rattling and you're concentrating, look at this. Like, this is beautiful. Here's the guy, co-driver, that gives you directions. A cool thing they did that usually in such games, the voice is just different clips stuck together. So you got one for the numbers and where he's going, to 3 left, over crest, right? but they went the extra mile here because they recorded 2 different versions. One when you're driving normal, or when it's fairly safe, and when you're driving too fast, or when the car is being jostled around, then the guy sounds a little bit nervous when he's giving you the directions. That is a really nice flourish there that they put in. But look at this. I wouldn't dare try to translate this to how a real car behaves in real life, because I don't trust the software enough, and I also don't trust this wheel enough. But the way I have it set up at the moment feels fairly authentic. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's for now less efficient for me than the controller, but in terms of how it feels, right, it's miles ahead. And look how smooth you can drive with this thing. Ah. There's the lake we saw earlier.
Right 3 past junction opens over 2 crests. Keep left through dip, crest. Right 5 past junction and crest.
It is a workout though on the legs, because they have to move around under my belly, and my belly is fairly heavy. But like I said, worth it. Definitely worth it. Also, it's not like I can't use a bit of a workout. So. You can hear a little bit in the inside camera how the gravel is spritzing up against the underside of the car, against the metal underbelly. Underside, not a car guy. The underside of the car. And if you watch dashboard cameras or in-car cameras from a real rally race on YouTube, it's even wilder in real life. Like, it's really hammering against the car down there. Kind of not ideal there. Kind of have to let it drift me out of the turn there. Maybe a bit too much. But whatever. I'm just happy we didn't crash, because usually,
Crest 130.
Little Finnish log cabin. Dude taking photos. One time I was driving and car lost control, and I plowed into a crowd, like the crowd there that's gathered there on the weird rubber gate thing there, and I plowed right into them. And the game is not set up for that, so it doesn't have physics where they get thrown around, right? Limbs everywhere. The game just fades to white and then sets you back on the track and says 15-second penalty, which is what you always get when you reset with 15, 13. So if you were to, say, lose control and end up in the woods on the side there, and you had to reset the car, then you get like 13 seconds or so penalty, because that is the time it would take for your minions to run up and carry the thing back to the street. I don't know. It's just so funny that when you drive into people, it automatically resets you and gives you the penalty, but it appears as if you got a 13-second penalty for killing someone, right? So when that happens to me, I do the thing that Charles Dance does in Last Action Hero, where he goes, "I've just murdered a man!" And that always cracks me up. Any hoozles. Thanks for watching this, baby. Thanks for letting me ramble. I'm gonna stop the recording here.